She stands in the courtroom looking controlled, composed, and noticeably calm for someone facing a life sentence. Less than 2 years ago, she wore a crown as Miss Donalsonville, smiling for cameras at pageants across Georgia. Today, she's facing something far different than judges with scorecards. She's facing a jury that will decide if she murdered an 18-month-old child. 19-year-old Trinity Poague, former Miss Donalsonville, takes her seat between her attorneys. To anyone glancing at her in that moment, she appears steady, as though the last 2 years of accusations, interviews, and forensic examinations might finally be behind her. Her defense team has spent days portraying her as a responsible college freshman, a young woman with no history of violence, someone they insist could not and would not harm an 18-month-old child. Supporters echo the sentiment. They describe her as polite, academically focused, and involved in her campus community. Even her pageant background is highlighted, not to glamorize her, but to underscore a point the defense repeated several times, that there was nothing in her past suggesting aggression or cruelty. But the evidence presented over 4 days tells a different story. This is the story of how a beauty queen became a killer, and how medical testimony sealed her fate. The prosecution detailed a tight timeline, a short window of opportunity, and medical findings they argued could not be explained by an accident. They described a child who entered a college dorm healthy and alert and was carried out the next day with catastrophic head and abdominal injuries. And now, on December 5th, 2025, everything comes down to this moment.
The verdict reads as follows as to each count. On count 1, it says, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." Of felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated battery, 2 counts, and cruelty to child in the 1st degree.
The courtroom erupts in muffled gasps. Trinity Poague collapses into sobs as the word guilty echoes 5 times through Sumter County Superior Court. Her hands shake uncontrollably. Her face crumples. Just minutes earlier, she'd sat stone-faced, shoulders squared like she was still on a pageant stage. Now, the mask shatters. Less than an hour before this moment, 12 jurors had deliberated. Less than 60 minutes to decide whether Trinity Poague had beaten an 18-month-old baby to death. The evidence was overwhelming, the timeline was airtight, and the victim? A toddler named Romeo. Everyone called him JD, who'd been alive, healthy, and smiling just 30 minutes before he was rushed to the emergency room, dying from catastrophic head trauma. But Trinity had an explanation. Multiple explanations, actually. 5 different versions of what happened. She said JD fell off a bed. Then she said he fell off a chair. Then she claimed he rolled off an air mattress. She even suggested he might have been hurt in a shower accident the night before. Each story shifted. Each one fell apart under scrutiny. And when the medical experts took the stand, they destroyed every single alibi. Because this wasn't a fall. This wasn't an accident. This was blunt force. Trauma so severe that JD's skull fractured from ear to ear. His brain hemorrhaged massively, and his liver was lacerated, injuries that require the kind of force you'd see in a car crash, not from tumbling off furniture. But before we move into the sentencing, let's go through what brought this case and this young woman to this point. January 14th, 2024, Georgia Southwestern State University in Americus, Georgia. A Sunday afternoon, Trinity Poague, 18 years old at the time, sat in her dorm room in Oaks Hall. Her boyfriend, Julian Williams, had just left to pick up pizza and drinks from a nearby Walmart. He'd been gone about 30 minutes. Surveillance footage shows him leaving at 11:55 a.m. In those 30 minutes, Trinity was alone with JD. When Julian returned at 12:30 p.m., JD was unresponsive.
Who was Romeo Angeles?
It's my son. She gave him some Mountain Dew and like a Frito Dorito. It's Frito like the barbecue twisted chips.
Okay.
And he was sitting there eating them. She had him in her hands. It's like he's limp. I don't know what happened. So I threw the pizza, dropped it, and grabbed him and took off.
Julian Williams testified that when he walked through the door, Trinity was holding JD. The baby's head was bobbing. He couldn't hold it up. His body was limp. He was vomiting. Julian grabbed him and sprinted to his car. At Phoebe Sumter Medical Center, the emergency room staff found JD pulseless and not breathing. Dr. Michael Busman, an ER physician with over 30 years of experience, testified that when JD arrived, he had no pulse, no respiration, and was in full cardiac arrest.
I don't think there was a odd problem or chronic disease that killed him.
What killed him? What did he die from?
What killed him was the head trauma and the bleeding in the brain. It would have to be multiple impacts.
The CT scan revealed catastrophic injuries: a fractured skull, massive brain hemorrhaging, facial swelling, fluid draining from his nose, and a lacerated liver. Dr. Busman noted fresh bruising on JD's face, forehead, neck, and cheeks. These were not old injuries. They were fresh.
And when you say multiple impacts, what do you mean by impact?
Trauma or direct blow to those body parts.
Trinity's initial story: she told hospital staff that JD had been eating chips and suddenly became unresponsive. Later, she changed it. She said he fell off a chair. Then she said he fell off a bed the night before. Then she mentioned a possible shower accident. By the time investigators finished interviewing her, she'd given 5 different versions. But the medical evidence told a different story.
Would we hear these little tidbits, like coming in through the testimony that, oh, there might have been a fall, from a chair or from a bed? To get to skull fractures and a liver laceration, does that sound right to you, Dr. Jason?
Yeah, a lot of it, you're trying to recreate how this could have happened in your head as a physician, because as a physician, you are a designated reporter. So this is a child abuse case, obviously, and child harm obviously was done to the point of death.
Dr. Jason Smith, a traumatic brain injury expert, explained that the injuries JD sustained were not consistent with a simple fall. A fall from a bed or chair, even a 40-inch high dorm bed, wouldn't fracture a skull like this. It wouldn't lacerate a liver, and it certainly wouldn't cause the pattern of bruising found on JD's face.
So did the baby fall off of something, go belly first and lacerate the liver, and then go backwards and hit the back of the head? Or were they pushed into a chair and then came backwards off that chair and hit their head? So those are the best things that I could come up with my experience when it comes to traumatic injuries and trying to piece together the objective information that we have and do some sort of a subjective answer to that question.
Dr. Anthony Clark, the GBI's deputy chief medical examiner, testified that JD died from abusive head trauma. The skull fracture alone, which is a complex fracture at the base of the skull, was enough to be fatal. But that wasn't all. JD's brain was hemorrhaging in multiple locations. His liver was torn. His adrenal gland was crushed. These injuries required tremendous focused force.
Do you have an opinion as to why this child died?
I felt it was due to abusive head trauma.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not there was any significant time difference or time gap between the infliction of the trauma and the onset of symptoms and ultimately death?
And again, in my opinion, seconds to minutes after the trauma was occurred.
Dr. Clark was clear. The symptoms would have appeared within seconds to minutes of the injury. There was no delayed onset. There was no, he fell last night and seemed fine. If JD had sustained these injuries hours earlier, he would have been symptomatic immediately. He would have been vomiting, limp, and unresponsive. But the videos and photos taken just before Julian left for pizza showed a healthy, alert toddler. The timeline was devastating for Trinity's defense. At 11:55 a.m., JD was fine. By 12:30 p.m., he was dying. And in those 35 minutes, only one person was with him: Trinity Poague. To understand exactly what happened in that dorm room and why, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to when Trinity Poague was still just a small-town beauty queen with big dreams, and before a little boy's life would end in tragedy. Trinity was born around 2005 in Donalsonville, Georgia, a rural town in Seminole County with a population hovering around 2,600 people. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where high school football games are community events, and where beauty pageants are a pathway to local fame and college scholarships. Trinity competed in pageants throughout her teenage years, eventually earning the title of Miss Donalsonville in 2023. She also competed in the Miss National Peanut Festival pageant, representing her region with the poise and confidence that judges look for. In the fall of 2023, Trinity enrolled as a freshman at Georgia Southwestern State University in Americus, about 60 miles from her hometown. She was part of the President Jimmy Carter Leadership Program, a prestigious scholarship initiative focusing on civic engagement and leadership development. She lived in the Oaks II dormitory on campus, pursuing what looked like a bright future. But there was tension beneath the surface. Trinity had begun dating Julian Williams, a 23-year-old who had a son from a previous relationship. Romeo Angeles, nicknamed JD, was born on June 25, 2022, to Julian and his ex-partner, Shayla Angeles Garnica. The relationship between Julian and Shayla ended early, and Julian became JD's primary caregiver. The 18-month-old was described by everyone who knew him as a healthy, happy little boy. But Trinity struggled with JD's presence in her relationship with Julian. Text messages recovered from Trinity's phone would later reveal her true feelings. In one message sent to her roommate, Paris Permont, on August 17, 2023, months before JD's death, Trinity wrote something chilling.
After you responded and said you were up, Ms. Poague sent another message. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the message that's at the top of page 114 of that printout.
Yes, sir.
What does that message say?
It says, why do I feel anger towards JD? Like earlier when we were in bed and JD kept touching Jay's face, I almost cried.
Your response to that, which came again just a few seconds later, and this is at the bottom of page 113.
Okay.
Your response to that was what?
What do you mean, like you feel anger towards JD, question mark?
And then her reply to you a minute later, what was what?
Like, I don't know, not jealousy, but like I want to love him, but instead of loving, I just feel like angry, like want to punch him. LMFAO, OMG, that sounds so bad.
This wasn't a one-time vent. Trinity repeatedly expressed frustration about JD. In another message, she wrote, I can't do being around JD anymore. He hates me and I hate him. The prosecution had a theory. Trinity Poague resented this child. She wanted her own baby with JD's father, Julian Williams. But Julian already had a son. And Trinity, according to texts she'd sent just hours before JD died, hated him for it.
Jay, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This weekend was a struggle for me and I don't know what to do. I love you so much, but letting JD hit the wall and see the damage it did really hurt me, and it just lets me know that I don't have JD's best interest at heart. You should not be with a girl that doesn't love your son. I keep trying and trying, but nothing changes. Every time I see him, I cry. I cry because he looks like you, just like you, and a part of me wishes he wasn't yours. I cry because I realize that you and someone else share something so sweet, and that's love for him. I don't know what to do, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Like when you called the face expression you gave me. I cannot be around him anymore. I'm sorry, I don't know where that leaves us, but I know that you will never make a decision. I want a family of my own, Jay. Every time I see him, I just want to cry. Seeing him happy and how he is with you at your house and how he is with me, he hates me, Jay. He cries nonstop with me.
That's what Trinity texted her roommate on the morning of January 13th, 2024. Hours later, JD was dead. These messages became crucial evidence at trial. They painted a picture of a young woman who resented her boyfriend's child. A woman who felt like JD was standing in the way of the life she wanted with Julian.
I told you from the beginning that I would always try to love JD is the same as mine, but since me and you have gotten serious, every time I see him, I just get angry at the world, and I just have a gut feeling of anger. I don't know what it is. Maybe because I'm so young, and I know if I am committed to you, then I'm committed to him. You're 24 and I'm 18, and I know that the age difference isn't much, but you have a kid and you have more responsibilities than just spoiling me. I don't want to be your second baby mama. I wanted to be your first, but that won't ever happen, and I don't think that I can continue to be in a relationship with you and have that in the back of my mind.
I don't want to be your second baby mama. I wanted to be your first. This was the motive prosecutors argued in court. Trinity wanted her own child with Julian, but JD was in the way. She resented him. And on January 13th, when Julian left her alone with JD for 30 minutes, she snapped. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, was called to Georgia Southwestern State University on January 14th at approximately 2 p.m., shortly after JD was pronounced dead. The GSW Police Department requested assistance, and GBI agents began interviewing witnesses immediately. Julian Williams was one of the first people questioned. He spent 4 hours at the police station in the 8 hours following JD's death, giving multiple statements. Investigators scrutinized his timeline, his relationship with Trinity, and his actions that day. But the evidence cleared him quickly. Surveillance footage confirmed he'd left at 11:55 a.m. and returned at 12:30 p.m. Photos and videos taken before he left showed JD healthy and unharmed. Trinity, on the other hand, gave conflicting statements. She told investigators 5 different versions of what happened. JD choked on chips. He rolled off an air mattress. He fell off a bed the night before. He slipped in the shower with Julian, who was allegedly drunk. He fell off a chair that morning. None of these stories aligned with the medical evidence, and none of them explained why JD went from healthy to dying in 30 minutes. GBI agents also recovered Trinity's phone. The digital forensics were damning. Shortly after JD was taken to the hospital, Trinity searched on her phone. How do you get a brain bleed? And how can a depressed skull fracture go unnoticed?
When you were examining Ms. Poague's phone, or examining the data that was extracted from Ms. Poague's phone, did you extract some data regarding some internet searches, web searches that were performed on the phone?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when were the web searches that you were looking at, were there any from January 14th, 2024?
Yes, sir, there were several.
Okay. And can you tell the jury what time were the web searches in question?
I don't remember at this moment, without referring back to some things on exactly when they started, but in a general sense.
Well, if you need to look at your report or your notes, you can do so if you have those.
Yes, I do.
What were the web searches? What were the search terms that or search phrases that Ms. Poague typed into her phone during, we're talking at this time, at this moment, about the 2:30 to 4 o'clock time frame? What were the messages that she typed in?
How do you get a brain bleed? And can a depressed skull fracture go unnoticed? And then there were also some searches on how to deactivate Facebook. And then there were a couple of other searches related to infant brain bleeds.
These searches suggested consciousness of guilt. Trinity knew JD had a brain bleed and a skull fracture, information she shouldn't have had unless she was the one who caused it. On January 20th, 2024, GBI agents arrested Trinity Poague. She was charged with malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children. She was booked into Sumter County Jail with no bond. Her title as Miss Donalsonville was revoked. The trial began on December 2nd, 2025 in Sumter County Superior Court. Judge W. James Sizemore Jr. presided. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Louis Bud Lamb, a veteran prosecutor with over 30 years in the Southwestern Judicial Circuit. Trinity's defense attorney was Wilbur T. Tim Gamble III. The trial lasted 4 days. 12 jurors heard testimony from witnesses, including Julian Williams, medical experts, law enforcement, and Trinity's own dorm mates.
Ms. Pitts, if you'd walk up here to the witness stand and then, before you have a seat, face Mr. Gamble and receive the oath, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat. Ms. Pitts, could you please state your full name for the court?
Megan Nicole Pitts.
And Ms. Pitts, where are you from? Not where you're living right now, but where's your hometown?
Griffin, Georgia.
Megan Pitts, a dorm mate, testified that she heard JD crying frequently around Trinity. She said JD responded better to other people than he did to Trinity, and that Trinity had openly voiced her dislike for the child in group settings.
After you responded and said you were up, Ms. Poague sent another message, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the message that's at the top of page 114 of that printout.
Yes, sir.
What does that message say?
It says, why do I feel anger towards JD? Like earlier when we were in bed and JD kept touching Jay's face, I almost cried.
Paris Permont, Trinity's suite mate, testified about the text messages. She confirmed that Trinity had repeatedly expressed frustration with JD, including the message where Trinity wrote that she wanted to punch him. Dr. Michael Busman took the stand and explained the severity of JD's injuries. He testified that the brain hemorrhage alone would have been fatal, but combined with the skull fracture and liver laceration, JD had no chance of survival. Dr. Anthony Clark, the GBI medical examiner, testified that JD's injuries were consistent with abusive head trauma. He explained that the force required to cause these injuries was far beyond what a simple fall could produce. He compared it to the kind of trauma seen in car accidents.
Michael Busman, who's practiced medicine in this town for 30-something years. You know Jill Olin, who has practiced medicine in this town for 15 or 17 years. Dr. Anthony Clark, who has served as a medical examiner both in Georgia and Florida, you know, for the last 30-something years, who's done 8,100 autopsies, who's testified in court as an expert witness hundreds of times as to the cause and manner of death. They all agree this child died from this wound. Now, there are other injuries, and we're going to talk about those later in my argument, okay? But for right now, well, I want you to focus on this one, and that is that it is an undisputed fact that this child died from head trauma. It's also undisputed that the trauma, or the cause of the trauma, is also undisputed. Dr. Clark says it was a tremendous impact to the back of the head. These are quotes I wrote down while I was listening to the testimony. He says it was a tremendous impact to the back of the head. Dr. Bussman says it was a direct, high-impact blow. There's not a question as to whether or not or how you get this kind of head trauma. In other words, it's beyond controversy. You can't get this kind of head trauma from bumping your head on the door back here, or you can't get this kind of head trauma because you have weak bones.
The defense tried to argue that JD's injuries could have occurred earlier, perhaps the night before or during a shower accident. But every medical expert who testified said the same thing. These injuries would have caused immediate symptoms. If JD had been hurt the night before, he wouldn't have been awake and eating chips the next morning.
Did a bottle of rum or a dispute or a fight over social media passwords kill that child? No. What killed that child was, with beyond dispute, it was a massive, tremendous blow to the back of his head that cracked his skull from here to here. That girl killed that little boy. She killed that little boy. She cracked his skull out of anger, out of malice. We'll talk about all that later. She killed that little boy. She's the only person who could possibly have done it in the time frame in which it had to have occurred.
In his closing argument, DA Bud Lamb was emphatic. That girl killed that little boy. He told the jury. She cracked his skull out of anger, out of malice. Lamb emphasized the 35-minute window. From 11:55 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., only Trinity was with JD. No one else could have caused these injuries. No one else had the opportunity. The defense argued that investigators failed to examine Julian's hands for bruising or blood. They pointed out that no blood was found at the scene. They suggested that the investigation was rushed, that Trinity was presumed guilty from the start. But the evidence was overwhelming. The timeline, the texts, the medical testimony, the phone searches. The jury deliberated for less than 1 hour. At approximately 4:39 p.m. on December 5th, 2025, the jury returned with their verdict.
On count one, it says, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." On counts 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of felony murder, 2 counts, aggravated battery, 2 counts, and cruelty to child in the 1st degree." Y'all can have a seat.
Trinity Poague was acquitted of malice murder, the charge that required proof of specific intent to kill. But she was convicted on 5 other counts, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of 1st-degree cruelty to children. Trinity sobbed uncontrollably as each guilty verdict was read. Her hands shook, her face crumpled. She looked nothing like the composed beauty queen who'd smiled in pageant photos just 2 years earlier. Less than 1 hour after the verdict, Judge Sizemore proceeded with sentencing. The state requested life without parole, but Judge Sizemore sentenced Trinity to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years on the primary felony murder count, plus 20 years concurrent on the cruelty to children charge. Trinity stared at the floor during sentencing, avoiding the judge's gaze. Her tears had stopped. She looked hollow. Trinity Poague is now incarcerated in a Georgia state prison. She will not be eligible for parole until 2055, when she is 50 years old. She has 30 days to file an appeal. As of December 10th, 2025, no appeal has been filed. Julian Williams attended the sentencing but did not make a statement. A GoFundMe campaign was set up to help him with funeral costs and therapy. It has raised over $12,000. JD's mother, Shayla Angeles Garnica, did not attend the trial. No statement from her has been made public. In an interview after the verdict, DA Bud Lamb said Trinity lost it when JD cried after Julian left for pizza. He theorized that Trinity picked JD up by the shoulders and slammed him down with tremendous force, possibly against a desk or the floor.
What I think happened, and what makes the most sense in light of all of the evidence that we had, is that this child was crying, this child was upset once the father had left, that she couldn't get him to be quiet, that she, I can't tell you that she slapped him, that she did whatever, but there was a mark on his face, as the medical examiner testified, that was fresh, that was very compatible with either this kind of a grip that was, so hard that it left a bruise here, or a slap across the face, and then the injury at the base of the skull. There were other bruises on the head, and there was also internal injuries in the abdomen. His liver was lacerated. His adrenal gland was lacerated. There was bleeding around his lungs and around his ribs. And I think that throwing the child against something, picking him up, the medical examiner hypothesized that he might have been picked up, by his shoulders like this and slammed down really hard against a desk, against a bed.
The medical examiner's hypothesis aligned with this theory. The pattern of injuries, skull fracture at the base of the head, liver laceration, bruising consistent with gripping, all pointed to a violent, forceful act. But Trinity never confessed. She maintained her innocence throughout the investigation and trial. She did not testify in her own defense. Her defense attorney, Tim Gamble, argued that not a single person can say who hurt JD. He claimed the state's case was built on suspicion, not evidence. He pointed to investigative gaps. No blood at the scene, no hand exams conducted on Trinity or Julian, no weapon recovered. But the jury disagreed. They found the timeline evidence irrefutable. JD was healthy at 11:55 a.m. He was dying at 12:30 p.m., and in those 35 minutes, Trinity was the only person with him. The medical testimony sealed her fate. You can't fall off a bed and suffer injuries like this. You can't roll off an air mattress and fracture your skull from ear to ear. You can't slip in a shower and lacerate your liver. These were not accidents. They were acts of violence. Public reaction to the case was swift and harsh. Social media posts condemned Trinity, with many expressing outrage that she would be eligible for parole in 30 years. One post on X called the acquittal on malice murder bullshit and argued Trinity deserved life without parole. Another post mocked Trinity's beauty queen background, writing, "Only prison pageants for this pageant queen." The case drew international attention, with outlets as far as India covering the trial. The beauty queen angle became a focal point, highlighting the stark contrast between Trinity's polished public image and the brutality of the crime. In true crime communities online, the case sparked discussions about jealousy, resentment, and the dangers of step-parenting dynamics. Many pointed to Trinity's texts as evidence that she viewed JD as an obstacle to the life she wanted with Julian. "I wanted to be your first baby mama," she'd written, but she wasn't. And JD paid the price. JD Angeles, Romeo Jackson Drew, was 18 months old when he died. He was just beginning to talk, just learning to walk with confidence. Photos from the hours before his death show him smiling, eating chips, playing. He had no idea what was coming. His father, Julian Williams, kept the jacket JD vomited on during the frantic drive to the hospital. He told the court it was the last memory he had of his son. He never washed it.
So when you were getting in the car, when you were in the car, he threw up on you. Did anybody ask you to take the jacket so they could test to see if the child threw up on your jacket?
No.
If they had, would you have turned it over to them?
Yes, I still have it also.
Where is it?
At my house.
Has it ever been cleaned?
No.
Why?
Because that's the last thing I got to remember of.
Trinity Poague will spend at least the next 30 years in prison. But for JD, there are no more chances, no more smiles, no more birthdays. A healthy little boy walked into a dorm room on January 13th, 2024. 35 minutes later, he was dying, and the person responsible was supposed to be taking care of him. The medical experts were clear. The timeline was airtight. The evidence was overwhelming. Trinity Poague killed J.D. Angelus, and no amount of beauty pageant smiles could hide that truth. Justice was served, but it can never bring back an 18-month-old child who died because he cried too much for the wrong person.